Hey guys, Ginger in the Woods here. So today I thought I would do a video on some of the stuff that I take with me out into the woods, just my day-to-day kind of stuff, and a few of the books and magazines that have really helped me learn and grow into what I am now. Feeling pretty experienced out in the wilderness, and so yeah, I kind of want to show you what got me there, and hopefully it'll inspire you to get out there and feel a little more comfortable out in the wilderness. So first and foremost is my everyday stuff. So to start with is this little pocket knife. This is called a friction folder because there's no like little liner lock, there's no lock back on it. It's just this tab and it flips open and it stays there with friction. So this is about 3.5, 4 inches long for a blade and about 4 inches long for the handle. I made this out of an old file, and this is some purple heartwood with brass pins. You can go get really good quality pocket knives. If you know the quality goes up with the amount of money that you're willing to spend. You do now and then find these little gems that are super cheap and they're very high quality. So keep your eyes open. You might find one. Hell, you'll find one at a flea market, for crying out loud. I found a really nice little folding buck knife years and years ago at a flea market, and it served me well right up until I tried batoning with it and I snapped it. My bad. Yeah, don't try and baton a folding knife. Not a great plan. Anyway, so this is what I carry with me all the time. I try and keep this as sharp as possible, just because a sharp knife is a lot safer than a dull knife, because the age-old saying goes, you're going to cut yourself with a dull knife before you'll cut yourself with a sharp knife. And basically the theory behind that is you have to put a lot more pressure and effort into cutting something with a dull knife than you do with a sharp one. A sharp knife should just about glide through whatever you put it up against. So that's my pocket knife. That stays in my pocket almost all the time. Next up is my lighter. Lighters come in handy for a variety of reasons. Maybe your buddy's out having a smoke and doesn't have a lighter or match or anything, so you whip out your lighter. You need to start a fire. You need to, you got a thread coming off on your shirt or your jacket and you just want to get rid of it. Hit it with the lighter. Cut it off with your pocket knife and then hit it with the lighter. A lighter just comes in handy for a lot of different things. Would I necessarily recommend a Zippo out in the woods? Not so much. And the only reason I wouldn't highly recommend it is because the fuel doesn't last as long as your standard Bic lighter. So if I had to absolutely choose between my Zippo and a Bic lighter, I would take the Bic lighter because it doesn't take much to dry them off and you can actually make fire even if there's no fuel left in it. And we'll do a video on that maybe in the future. So that's my kind of everyday carry. What I take with me out into the woods, first and foremost, again, is the knife. So this, and again, is a knife of my own design, or my own making, I shouldn't say. It's my design. This is based off of the legendary bushman Horace Kephart. The design it didn't vary actually that much from his original design. So it's spear point, real basic handle. There's no finger guard up here. There is a finger choil here, which is not in his design. I like to be able to really choke up, and it just gives you that extra little bit of control, and no matter what you're doing. Full tang design. You can see the spine of the knife goes all the way right to the end, and these are just two handle scales. Brass pins again, or brass pin. Back here is a piece of copper tubing, and I've just tied a little monkey's fist knot on the end for some decoration and a little bit of extra grip, so you can kind of come back and you actually have a little bit of chopping power with it. Not that you're going to be chopping a whole lot with this, it's pretty small, but you don't need a big knife to do a lot of work. So, and that's something I've learned over the years. I started off with a huge knife, a great big Bowie knife. I loved it. I did pass it on to a friend of mine. He's going to be giving it to his kid when he comes of age in like 10 years or so. So that'll be kind of cool. Anyways, the more I learned, the smaller the knife got. And believe it or not, you can do as much, if not more, with a smaller knife than you can with a big one. Big one, it's going to do a lot of things pretty good. Your smaller knife is going to do more things better, in my opinion. It depends on who you talk to. Anyways, I prefer this knife. I love it. It served me well for a very long time. I have no intentions of replacing it or getting rid of it anytime soon. So, and my sheath, real basic. It's just a piece of leather that I folded in half right around the knife. I kind of wet formed it, belt loop in the back, and it sort of just sits in there with friction. And that's my bush knife. That's what I take out with me. Next up is my sharpening slash fire kit. This guy right here. Again, I made this pouch myself. I'm sure you can find pouches similar to it. Check out Army Surplus stores, Army Surplus websites. There's a few things I take out with me that I've gotten from the Army Surplus store, and they're great. They're robust. They're for the military, so you know they're going to work and they're going to last. Anyways, so getting into this. First off is my ferrocerium rod and my striker. I don't go anywhere out in the bush without this thing. This is about 1/2 inch thick, about 5 inches or so long, and it says you get about 20,000 strikes out of this. So this is going to outlive me. I'll probably pass this on to my kids one day and upgrade to a better one. So moving on. Oh, by the way, this you can get this on Amazon, so don't go spending a pile of money at a retail store, because you can probably get it from Amazon quite a bit cheaper. Next up is my steel. This, who made this? I'm honestly not sure who makes this. My dad gave this to me, and I'll talk to him, and if I can figure out what company makes this, I'll pass that information along. But this is just kind of a basic diamond steel, and this is good to just kind of keep an edge on your knife if you're doing some heavy work throughout the day and you just need to get that burr back and get it nice and sharp again. So that goes in my little pouch. It can also go on my belt. It's got a little belt loop there, but that just stays in my pouch. Next up, I've got where is it? Hang on, bear with me. A piece of leather that I have charged with some white jeweler's rouge. It's a really fine polishing compound, just super, super, super fine abrasive. And basically, once you've gone over your knife with your steel, you run it over your leather strip or strop a few times, and after a little while you should be able to get your knife back to shaving sharp, which, if you can manage it, you should always keep your knife that sharp. Next up is just a little what is this, a flex cut carving jack. This has 6 different tools in it. We've got a little, I think this is called a corner gouge. Hopefully you guys can see this. I can get a good profile of it. Come on, focus. Come on, you can do it. Why is it focusing on my shirt? Oh well, okay. You guys can kind of see what this is. So next up is just a standard, straight knife. Just a straight little carving knife. After that, oh, I locked it. There we go. Is a small chisel. And on the other side, come on, in you go, is, if I can get it out, there we go. We've got a spoon or bowl knife, more or less a spoon knife. It's pretty shallow to be doing bowls with this. After that, we have a couple different types of gouges. We've got this guy here. This would be, if you're doing kind of like a deeper spoon, more like kind of like a small ladle or a stir stick, something like that. And after that, oh, get back here. There we go. Is this gouge. And this one is, again, it's pretty small. Oh, come on, why won't you focus? So I think I really got to upgrade to a better camera than this. But basically, this would be perfect for making small bowls or anything like that. I use it almost all the time when I get out into the woods. It comes in handy for a lot of different things. More often than not, I'll be carving myself a spoon or a fork to eat my dinner with while my dinner's cooking. So that goes in my sharpening kit. And almost last but not least is my whetstone. You can buy these at, if you're a local here on the island, you can buy these at Walker's Saw Shop. Not this one in particular. They got a bit of a different one. It's a little more specified to axes. It's a bit more aggressive and would honestly probably work a little bit better than this one. But this one does the job, and it's got a lot of sentimental value, so I keep it, and it works. So almost last, and definitely last but not least, is this guy. This is a carbide sharpener made by, who is it? Chestnut Tools. My sister actually got this for me, and it's worked great. I've nicked my axe, I've nicked my knives more than once out there, and this just hogs out a pile of material and just gets you back down to a nice, even, straight edge that you can later refine with your whetstone, your steel, and go all the way to your leather strop. So that's my whole pouch right there. Next up is some people would call it like a possibles bag. I call it a tinder pouch. You don't have to put tinder in here necessarily. It's just what I'm calling it. But again, my own making. It's just a leather pouch and a piece of buckskin. What I did with the buckskin is I just traced out a dinner plate, cut that out, and then, as you can see, punched a bunch of holes around the top and then laced it together, and then I can cinch it up so nothing falls out of it. And so this, as you're walking down the trail and you know you're going to be needing a fire later, you could just fill this up with pitch wood or globs of pitch, tinder, or if you're prepared for your fire already, you can fill this up with stuff for tea, like stinging nettle or fir buds or berries if you can find them. Any kind of forage food. So it's great to have on you just for that thing that you notice on the trail. You're like, oh, that could be handy later, and you just throw it in your pouch and you don't have to worry about it. And we'll get this all sort of folded back up here. Next up is my paracord. It's got a nice little carabiner on it, so it just clips onto my belt and I don't have to worry about it. This is about 100 feet long, and see all the white speckling on here? That's all reflective threading that they've added into the rope. And believe me, it works very well. When I did my overnighter, more than once, I looked back at my food bag just to make sure nothing was getting into it, and that rope lit up very well. I was very impressed with it. And okay, so that wasn't last. This is last. This is my saw that I take with me. This is a silky saw. I'm gonna say about 22 inches, give or take, overall. It's great. I love it. I also kind of hate it because as well as it cuts, it doesn't cut very aggressively. This saw is designed to be a pruner, not a bush saw. If you look at a lot of bush saws that you see in other YouTube videos, the teeth on it are super aggressive. And this thing works very well, but it makes really clean cuts, and clean cuts take time and they take a lot of effort. So by the end of my day, when I was doing my overnighter, I was exhausted primarily because of this thing. So as great as it is, I'm going to be upgrading here soon-ish to something that's going to cut a little more aggressively, because I'm not out there to make nice, pretty, clean cuts and keep things from dying. I'm just there to cut firewood and cut bits and pieces for whatever it is that I'm building at the time. And all of that goes onto this belt. I got this at an Army surplus store a little ways up island. It's served me very well over the few years that I've had it. It doesn't have to be something this big or anything like that. You can use a regular leather belt that you've got at home. It works just as well. I just like this because it's got a really simple clasp up front, and it clips in just like that. Super easy on and off. And all my stuff on my belt kit can just get wrapped around my waist. I don't have to loop it through my pants or anything like that. I just wrap it around, clip it on, and off I go. And if I need to get it off in a hurry, for whatever reason, or it's too cumbersome for what I'm doing at the time, I can just unclip it, take it off, and I don't have to worry about it. So that's kind of my belt kit. That's my everyday carry. That's what I like to bring with me when I get out into the woods. So what got me started in all of this, or what helped me find my way? It kind of started with this magazine, The Backwoodsman. They've been going for decades now at this point, I think. This is awesome minimalist knowledge that you can take with you anywhere. It's got stuff on how to make natural matches. What's this one got in it? Ice fishing, hunting with a slingshot, a poor man's forge, ultimate survival food. I don't know what that is. Old time switch locks. Kind of cool. Survival gardening and knife restoration, just all kinds of things. And basically the whole premise of this magazine is muzzle loading, woods lore, survival, history, homesteading, self-reliance, and primitive living skills. This is all super handy information when you're out in the woods, because this stuff comes to you at the oddest times. Like, oh yeah, I remember that one thing I read in that magazine like 6 months ago, but it applies to whatever it is you're doing right then and there. And so this is just, it's good knowledge. It's really interesting to read and see what other people are doing with their primitive living skills. So next up, another magazine that I love is called The American Frontiersman. Very similar to The Backwoodsman. It's almost twice as thick and sadly does not come out quite as often. But in this one, what do they got here? Do-it-yourself projects. You can make buckskin quivers, self-bow arrows, leather vests, a Greenland kayak. It teaches you how to make your own kayak. Let's see, what else do we got here? They got different kinds of recipes for like rabbit, hunting coyotes, all kinds of great information. And it's all just backwoods knowledge that's been passed down from generation to generation, and now they've got it in a easy to acquire magazine. Next up is called Backwoods Survival. So again, we're taking modern equipment and we're applying it to old skills. So things like the silky saw, or this little carbide sharpener from Chestnut Tools, or the carving jack by Flex Cut. That would be an example of a modern tool being used for old ideas. And it's just, it's good survival skills. They give you lots of little quick tips. Just, again, super awesome knowledge for out in the backwoods. The more you can get, the more you can absorb, the better off you're going to be. So do lots of reading. It'll help you in the long run. Next up, what do we got here? Carving. Might seem a little silly. You figure, well, I'll just take my knife and when I get out there, I'll make whatever I need. It's, it's simple in theory, but so is driving standard in a car. Put the clutch in, shift your gear, let the clutch out, away you go. Well, you jump in a car after you've never done it before and try and figure that out. It's a different story altogether. Same thing with carving. When you're carving, you've got to be aware of which way your grain is running. Things change from side to side on your piece of wood. If your beautiful curl that you peeled off on one side is going to turn into a big, ugly, nasty chip that you're going to have to snap off, and unfortunately you might have to start that again. So it's something to be really leery of. And in this book, it teaches you how your grain's going to work, how do I say it? I'm at a loss for words here. What you're trying to do is, forget it. Basically, if you want to carve, say, a fork, it's gonna show you the best way to carve the fork into that particular piece of wood, so that your little tines don't snap off when you're trying to cut a piece of meat or pick up a vegetable. If you want to make a comb, kind of like a fork, totally different set of rules. The grain has to be running a different way altogether. And it's just little things like that that make the act of doing it a lot easier, and it gives you lots of little designs. Like we got chopsticks, a fork, we have a bowl, there's a comb, there's a little butter knife, there's a little whatever that is, a little duck down there, a little tray, we've got a coffee spoon there, all kinds of good stuff. And this is a a simple guide to whittling by Melanie Abrantes. I'm not sure. Anyways, here, I'll show it to you guys. You can be the judge yourself. There it is. That's the whole book. I've used that book a few times. It's great. I love it. This next one I've had since I was, 10 years old, maybe younger, and it's knots. Knots, you guys, are a literal lifesaver out in the woods. You ask anyone who goes rock climbing, knots are super important. There's a knot to tie onto a log and just make it easier to drag it through the woods. There's a knot that just makes a little loop. It's called a bowline, however you want to pronounce it. There's a square knot. There's monkey fist knots, stopper knots. There's like noose knots. There's just look at how thick this book is, and this doesn't even cover how many knots are out there. I haven't tied every single knot in this book by any means. I've kind of just picked and chosen what appealed to me at the time or what I thought would work in a situation, and I'm probably going to flip through this 100 more times before it finally falls apart. So knots are never a bad thing to study. What do we got next? Weather. Learn to read the weather. It'll literally save your life. Same with knots, same with everything else I've talked about so far. Learning the weather is super important because you can determine if you've got half an hour or a couple of hours before the rain sets in, or if it's going to be super hot the next day, or. The people who actually made this book got so good at reading clouds, they could determine if a storm is going to roll in 2 to 3 weeks before it actually hit. So that's how good you can get at just looking at the clouds and determining what's going to happen throughout your day, week, or the month even. So actually here, I'll give you a close-up on who this is. This is by Louis D. Rubin Sr. and Jim Duncan, and it's called The Weather Wizard's Cloud Book. So thanks for giving me that, Dad. It's come in handy more than once. So that's kind of, we got one more for bushcrafty kind of stuff, and it's literally called Bushcraft: Outdoor Skills and Wilderness Survival by the legendary bushman Morris Kohansky, who I do believe is still with us today. He is getting up there in his years, but that doesn't mean he's not a walking encyclopedia of bush and backwoods knowledge. Again, this book's pretty thick, and it covers everything, like literally everything you could think of needing out in the woods. Firecraft, axecraft, knifecraft, sawcraft, bindcraft, sheltercraft, birch trees, conifer trees, willow trees, shrubs, how it goes over big game like moose, small game, rabbits and things like that. It's going to shows you how to process them, and I think it even goes into how you can cook them. So basically, if you want to learn proper bushcraft, go to your local bookstore, go to Chapters, go online, order this book, you guys. If you want to get good at this, order this book, research it, take it out into the woods with you, and apply what it tells you in it. It's probably some of the best knowledge you could hope for besides having a person actually teach you this stuff. Next up is what kind of got me onto the edible and medicinal plants, and it's literally called Edible and Medicinal Plants of Canada. Really great book. The only downside to it is it covers all the plants in Canada and their variations, which is really great because there's a lot of stuff that I find on the island here that they do have pictures and highly accurate descriptions of in this book. And there's been other times where they've shown something that grows on the East Coast, and you'll never find it here on the West Coast, but they do give a little blurb on it, and they have little warnings. They go over what's edible, what's medicinal, what's highly toxic, what's deadly, everything. And as important as it is to learn what you can eat and what's going to keep you alive, it's super important to learn what's fatal. You look at what's his name? He's the young guy that was in that movie, Into the Wild. He went into probably one of the most unforgiving places on Earth, honestly. Alaska seems like it's going to be a very bountiful place full of food and wildlife, and living's going to be easy. Well, unfortunately, it's a very different story out there. Sadly, he wasn't quite experienced enough when he went out into the woods, and although he did pretty good for a little while, you could see kind of towards the end of the film that things were not working out so well for him, especially his edible plants. He mistook one plant that had a variation of it, and you know what the telltale sign was? The veins in the leaves ran a different direction. That was it. And Les Stroud, Survivor Man, he did an interview with GQ, and he kind of mentioned this. And let's say I went out and I did the exact same thing as him. I ate that wrong plant. As I am now sitting here, I probably would have survived that. I would have been horribly ill for a few days, but my immune system at the moment is powerful enough to overcome the toxins that that plant had. At the time of his death, he was so diminished by that point. In the film, you can see he's super skinny. His eyes are sunken into the back of his head. He's just the epitome of unhealthy. And due to that fact, and his immune system was compromised, that plant, unfortunately, it killed him. And by the time he had realized what he'd done wrong, it was too late. And he just, at the end of the movie, he just kind of curls up, and that was it. But it's mistakes like that when you're in a survival situation that can be fatal. So it's insanely important to know your plants if you're going to eat them. And it's even more important to know how to test plants if you want to eat them. Les Stroud, he flat out said, don't try a new plant unless you have someone there who knows what they're talking about. And I do agree to some extent, but at the same time I also disagree, because there are ways to get around having someone there with you, such as found a new plant, you're not really sure what it is, take a piece of it and rub it on the inside of your wrist. It's a very, very sensitive part of your body, and if you're going to react to something, odds are pretty good you're going to react to it on the surface of that part of your skin. Second is a taste test. Just taste it. Some stuff's going to be super bitter, but it's still good for you. But what you're trying to determine is it going to react internally? So chew it up really well, spit it out, swish your mouth out so you're not accidentally swallowing whatever it is you just put in your mouth, and wait an hour to 2 hours and see if you react. Only at that point, if you're 100% certain you've got the book with you, you've got picture references, accurate descriptions, there's a lot of factors that play into trying new things out in the woods, only then would I recommend actually ingesting whatever it is you're looking at. So don't just go picking berries and random things, because it can make you highly ill, or unfortunately it can kill you, which is no fun for anybody. So this is a great kind of general book. Next up is something that was a little more accurate to where I live, and that's Plants of the Pacific Northwest. Or what did I say? What is it? The revised Plants of Coastal British Columbia. So this book, heckin' thick, and it's kind of the same as the Edible and Medicinal Plants of Canada book, where it goes over different types of trees and plants and shrubs and things that you can eat are going to help you, be medicine or are highly toxic. And it just kind of goes through how to find them, where they grow, what they're used for, things like that. It's such a wealth of knowledge, and I could spend my entire life reading this book and I probably wouldn't remember everything in it. But for the few things that I have remembered, it's really come in handy. I'm not saying you have to go out and get all of these books and subscribe to all these magazines and make all these things here. It's just stuff that I've done over the years. I started out with what the hell did I pay for it? It was like $12 at army surplus store, and it was this little teeny tiny Mora bush knife. By the way, Mora is a Swedish knife company. They make unbelievable knives. Very high quality steel for a super reasonable price. You can find them here in Canada at most retail knife shops like the House of Knives, things like that. They're people in there most of the time are highly knowledgeable. They're going to help you out as best they can. But that in mind, you can't go wrong with buying a Mora. They're great. They're cost effective, and if you're not sure if this is something you're interested in, that's what I would recommend. They're lightweight, they hold an edge, and they're affordable. They're great. Yeah, that's what else? I don't think I can think of much else to get yourself started in all of this. If I had to choose just a couple of things to look for next time you're out and about and you want a couple of these books, I would just start with Edible and Medicinal Plants of Canada. I would go with the Bushcraft book by Morse Kohansky. Yeah, I did say that right. And a book on knots. Just grab those three things. Hell, if you only want to start with one, start with this. Just that one. And then work your way up from there. Start with a Mora, start with your Bushcraft book, and yeah, go out in the woods and see what you can do. Try, fail, try again. A wise man once told me, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly. And if you don't understand that right now, just think about it for a little while. It'll make sense. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this exceptionally long episode of Ginger in the Woods. I hope you're all having a wonderful evening. And remember, the more you know, the less you need. Cheers.